Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. So today we have the second day of World Space Week, and I welcome you all. Okay, and as we can see, the audience is getting a bit closer as the day goes on. Okay, so let me introduce you to the today's keynote speaker. He is Dinesh sir. Okay, and to us, like he has guided us in a lot of things and mentored us. Okay, and he has been associated with ISRO for almost 12 years, and he has worked as a deputy program manager, and further he worked for the Skyroot as a program manager and safety officer, and currently he is pursuing his space law from Nalsar University. Okay, so yeah, he is the right person to guide you and give you the knowledge onto the space laws. So yeah, today's session is really going to be very informative. So I want you guys to stay till the end and enjoy the session. And please ask your questions at the end of the session. Okay. And yeah, over to you, sir. So you can start.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I think hope you people can hear me, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I was on mute. Okay. Thank you, Arijit, for nice introduction. And very good evening to all of you. Myself, Dinesh. I've been associated with ISRO from 2008 to 2022. For 13 years, 4 months, I was working in Indian Space Research Organization on the different projects. So I was a program manager for the operational launch vehicles. That is, whatever we are seeing, the PSLV, GSLV, and Mark 3. I was a program officer, program management officer. Then I have resigned ISRO and have joined Skyroot, and I've developed I was played a pivotal role in the maiden launch of the VKS Prarambh mission. So I think people have heard about the Skyroot, right? Okay. So most of you are on mute. Nice. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, nice. So then currently I'm pursuing my space law from Nalsar University. Apart from that, I'm having my own startup. Okay. So we'll go into the session now. Now, most of you have heard of space law or completely new? The curiosity I'm asking. Or does anyone know that there is law existing? Yes.
Yes, I know
Okay.
there's a law existing in space. Can I just tell one law if it is
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Tell me.
when the satellites get it's like lifetime like finishes, they make a orbit, and that they
Okay.
the
So
like
when
the
exactly, yeah,
satellites.
I got your point. Very nice. Okay. So that's where we talk about a deorbit to avoid the debris. So those mitigation plans also are covered over here, right? So let's start
Yes,
the
sir.
session. Okay. This is for a quick introduction of a law. So before starting the space law, I just want to say a few words about the law. As you know, what is the definition of a law? It is nothing but a set of rules given established by the government or institution, and we as the citizens of the country, uh, we are we are bound to abide we are bound to abide by the law, or we are meant to practice the law, and this is enforceable. If by law, if anyone is violating the law, we will be penalized as per Indian Penal Code. So the moment when we say any issue arises between two persons or two institutes, or between a person and an institute, will be going to the court. And mostly people are familiar through either through media sources or either through movie sources what exactly the court they will do. They will have arguments between the person, then they'll try to resolve the issue lawfully. And when you talk about the law, the section of the law can be classified or categorized into, depending upon the situation or depending upon the subject, it can be categorized as a criminal law that will be dealing with the crimes. Then there's a contract law between the two institutes. Is there any violation of the contract? We often hear of the property law, that is a civil law. Then we talk about the administrative law, that's once again is within the institutes. Then we talk about the tort law. This mainly emphasizes on the feelings of the people. Then human rights law. Then we are having the family law. Dispute between a wife and husband or dispute among the families can be resolved through the family law. And here comes the major part, what we call to be international law. This particular international law is a prime subject. Whether it can be enforced or not, down the line we will be seeing it. And why this particular international law has come in is very important in the current scenario. What made this international law to expand its domain? Because we are all sitting under one umbrella, we are all on the one earth, so we need to have one common law so that our trade, our interaction between the countries to countries will be easy, right? But we cannot have a common law between countries with our neighboring countries like we and Pakistan or India and China. We cannot have a common law because we are two different countries. But when it comes to our country, we need to follow our law. But there are few laws that we'll be discussing down the line. And the present focus is that I'm mainly focusing on technology law and space law. Now, the question of technology law arises because nowhere we are going to see the technology law over here. But why this technology law is essential? So let us talk about the session from prehistory time to the current situation, or we can say from the BC time to the current situation. So as you are aware, over the last 2 centuries, I could say, I will not say rather 2 centuries, I would say when the Industrial Revolution started, then the technology has, there's an immense growth in the technology. Let's say, for example, when we start talking about the steam engine, then telegraph, postal systems, then plastics, airplane, transistors, and going to the space flight, and then internet. You can see the amount of the technology in how many folds it is growing on. Before aviation or before aircraft, we used to go by ships to other countries. The moment when airplane came into realization, then we started traveling across the countries by airplane. Now, so when you are going to have an aviation on aircraft, then of course you need to have the law associated with it. Then when you're going to talk nowadays, most of you have heard about the cyber law, right? Because with the growing usage of the internet, growing usage of the smartphones, most of the people are subjected to crimes. You might be hearing of the UPI scams, you might be hearing of the OLX scams. Why we call it to be scams, and what could be the proper addressal mechanism to address such things? So law is going to address all such things. That's the reason the technology and law will go hand in hand, right? And what made this particular technology law to develop? Because it is the growth of the rapid industrialization, then the digitalization in the current scenario. So digitalization, when I talk about it, right now we are communicating over in an online mode. People are from different parts of the country, or some of them are different parts of the world. I'm sitting in a remote location and I'm trying to communicate with you. This is only possible through digital mode only. Then liberal trades, because now most of you might heard in the media that free trade we are entertaining between the countries to remove the boundaries. So this is nothing but globalization. Because we have to develop our country, we have to develop our per capita income, we have to enhance our GDP. So that's the reason the trade has been liberalized. And this particular trade is once again a bilateral, sometimes it will be a multilateral. And recently people have heard that India has hosted a G20. It's among the trade among the 20 countries. Then we have the G7, then we are having the BRICS. So different trades situations will arise. Next is the pandemic situations. Pandemic situations means we can currently treat this era as a pre-COVID and the post-COVID era. Pre-COVID, most of us goes to school, in person. Most of them have to go office in person. But post-pandemic, people are, the work from home concept has come, or attending classes from home has started. Then banking, that digital banking everything. You need not go to the place in person where one can go virtually. So these situations have arranged new policies, new frameworks. So accordingly, new law. So currently, we are in the information technology age, and down the line, we are going to see the rapid growth in the robotics, artificial intelligence, and biotech. And these are the areas where we need to, when the technology is growing, the law also has to proportionally address these situations, because everyone is not going to use the law, use the technology for a right purpose. Most of them can, some of them can misuse also. And please mark my words, when you misuse the technology, it can have a catastrophic effects. So the birth of cyber law, or the artificial intelligence and robotics law, space law, aviation law, maritime law, is an outcome of this technology advancements. And these law, will keep on, upgrading also down the line. There'll be modern major changes also. Apart from whatever the law, like criminal law or the civil law, whatever we have seen in the previous slide, there's going to be an extension for these things also. Clear? Any doubt? Okay.
No, sir.
Okay.
No.
Going to the next slide. So since this main course is focusing on the space law, we'll focus on the space law. So as I mentioned some in the first slide, that we are talking as an international law. So space law is a subject that is associated with the principles and the standards of the international law, and that deals with the objects and activities beyond the Earth's atmosphere. So just to have a quick review, what exactly is atmosphere? Our atmosphere is, most of you have studied in your school and colleges, +2, that we are having a different layers, a troposphere, stratosphere. So this stratosphere is the area at which most of the air objects, aircrafts will be flying. Beyond the stratosphere, you will not see any objects. And you can find out one dotted line over here, Kármán line. So beyond any object beyond this Kármán line, we can categorically mention them as a space objects. Like we are talking about suborbital flights, we are talking about satellites, we are talking about reusable launch vehicles, or we are talking about spacecrafts. So these space objects, by definition, will be beyond this Kármán line. Anything beyond less than this stratosphere are we call to be air objects. Then in between these two layers, we are going to have these hot air balloons, or we can otherwise call to be Montgolfier balloons. So I think, so people are familiar about these air objects and space objects. Now, the law pertaining to this aircraft and within this particular stratosphere, we can categorize them to be an air law. And the law for the space objects can be defined as a space law. Here are the major differences between air and space law. And when we talk about space objects, will they fall under this air category? As long as these space objects are in the air category, they fall under this air law. The moment they cross this boundary, then they fall under the space law. And why this particular law is required? Because some of you might heard in the media channels or in the movie channels that we cannot enter into the neighboring country's airspace without their permission. That will be treated as a violation of the norms, violation of the regulations. Why? Because let's say we are in our country, we are in our state, above up to an altitude of around 50 to 70 kilometers, that comes under our territory airspace. So we call to be territorial airspace. Without our permission, without our government permission, no foreign object in terms of aircraft or any other balloon can come into our space. If anyone is violating, they'll be liable to be punished. So this particular subject deals within the atmospheric domain. Beyond the atmospheric domain, we call to be a space law. And this particular space objects are subjected to international regime. There is no universal standards, of course, but depending upon the country to country, depending upon the bilateral treatments, agreements, depending upon the multilateral agreements, these norms can be made. Like, what could be the bilateral issues? let's say we are having a neighboring country with China and Pakistan. We are not in a good term with them, whereas we are in a good term with Pakistan. I mean, Nepal and Sri Lanka, Bhutan. So our agreement between Bhutan, our agreement between Sri Lanka will be differing from the agreement what we had with Pakistan and China. Right? Clear? Okay. So we'll go to the next slide. So when we talk about the space technology, how it has been evaluated, I mean, how it has the evolution of the space technology right from the 1957. And today we are celebrating the World Space Week in honor of this first satellite launch. And most of you are aware, and not most of you, all of you are aware that October 4th was the first day where man-made object, that is an artificial space body, a man-made object was launched into the space. Most of you are aware, right? In that honor, we are celebrating the World Space Week. So this is the first spacecraft. Then Russia was the leader. And in the 1961, the first cosmonaut, or we can call in the conventional word as astronaut, Yuri Gagarin went into the space, orbited around the Earth and came back. In the year 1969, NASA has made the moon mission, Apollo, famous mission. Then from there it continued. And in the current scenario, you can see the technology, how much it has got upgraded right from 1957 in the current scenario, where we are talking to have a colonies in interplanetary, that is in Mars and Moon, where Elon Musk is planning to have a colonies through his Mars mission. So his big ship. So in the current scenario, which is a major milestone, is that the spaceship. I think people are familiar. People are following the news, right? Okay. Now, so
Yes,
how it has been evaluated after World War II. Space exploration has been a major subject of the Cold War between the two major superpowers, that is USSR and USA, because space was mainly used for strategic and defense applications. Then uh, there was a time it was asked, UNO was asked to use space for civilian applications for peaceful purposes. So then the research has been focused into the exploration and the study of the universe, study of these stars, study of these asteroids. Then we have a space robotics. This is one going to be a major breakthrough in the coming years. Then Internet of Things, then space-based internet has been developed, and most of the people are fascinated to go for a space tourism, which was once upon a time people were laughing when space tourism was initially, when people thought it was a fiction, science fiction movie. But today space tourism has been realistic. Of course, recently Tom Cruise has gone to space for conducting a shooting of the movie, right? And space colonization also has started. And space tourism and space colonization are going to be the coming future in the near future. Hope we'll be, we'll be alive to see such things, and we'll be part of these things also. And next, advanced manufacturing and miniaturization, growing development in the nanotechnology, MEMS-based technology, and nano electromechanical systems. We are going to achieve such things, and manufacturing such miniature things also is a major challenge. And today, you know that most of the semiconductors are coming from Taiwan only. Of course, they are the rulers, and now we need to develop such advanced chips also to achieve this technological feats. So this is how technology has been evolved, and we have a better precision, we have a better capability, we have a better power engines to take up to these levels. And you are aware, right? To go to moon from Earth, it takes approximately a month. If you look into a Chandrayaan-3, it almost took a month to our rover to reach the land of a moon. It cannot be instantly. Are you aware of this orbit maneuvers?
Yes, sir.
Yes, good. Nice. To go Mars mission, our Mangalyaan mission, it took almost 9 months after the launch to reach Mars. So the famous Juno mission, it took 7 years for them to reach Jupiter orbit. So they're all why it takes more time is because the universe is very vast, and we are having a better power engines to address these issues. And in the coming down the line, coming near future, we'll substantially bring down the time also. Right? Okay. Now coming to India. Okay, not these are some of the space applications, and in our current scenario, in our current country, in our current scenario in India, what are the space vehicles we are using, and what are the major applications? We'll just have a quickly a brief. So India started in the year 1963 with Niki Apache rocket. From then we started slowly into a developing of from suborbital to orbital flight. The difference between a suborbital to orbital flight is suborbital flight will go at a certain apogee or a certain altitude, and then it will eject the payload, and then the payload will fall down to Earth after some time. Whereas orbital flight is that we are going to put a satellite orbit into an orbit which revolves around the Earth for a few days to few years. The first satellite launch vehicle, whatever we had in the year 1980, our former president, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, was the project director for this SLV. Then we have upgraded our satellite from SLV to ASLV, and from ASLV to Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. This from Polar Satellite to Geosynchronous Launch Vehicle. This is for a communication satellite. And then we are having a more and more requirement to increase the payload, increase the tonnage also. Tonnage in the sense the weight of the payload. So we started building a better, bigger power rocket. That is GSLV Mark III. So this polar orbit is mainly for the remote sensing applications and for the orbit into the inclination close to 90 degrees. They're mainly for Earth observation, or I can say remote sensing, mapping of the minerals and the vegetation. Whereas the GSLV, Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle, Mark II and Mark III are for communication and the navigation purposes. We can also use the satellite for the military applications. Right? So some of the noted remote sensing satellites, what we can talk about is the Cartosat, then ResourceSat, then OceanSat, KalpanaSat. Then satellites are also used for telemedicine and to study the ocean, to mount the minerals and surveillance purpose. Surveillance is what comes under, once again, for the civil applications as well as for the military applications. So most of you are familiar with the GPS. Whatever, let's say if you're going from point A to point B, most of you can drive from your office to school, or from home to office, you use the GPS today. So this is GPS is based out of US based satellites. So India has made its own GPS that we call to be Bhuvan, and other thing we are getting developed into a Navik. So very soon it will be useful, accessible to public. Once it is accessible, then we can use our own GPS, indigenous GPS. So, and I forgot to mention about SSLV, where in the last year it has become successful for a small satellite launch vehicle, because in the current scenario, people are going with a small satellite constellations. Then we had a reusable launch vehicle. Once again, in this beginning of this year, it was successful. Apart from this, then we are going to have the air-breathing rockets also. Those things I have not mentioned over here, but this is how we are evolving. And we are having the Gaganyaan mission, human space project also. This is again going to be a major breakthrough. So we are having two sectors. One is the public sector and the private sector. Public sector, public entity, what we call to be a Indian Space Research Organization, which is under DOS, and private entity and public enterprises, whatsoever we are getting. So that can be Skyroot, Agnikul, Pixel, Dhruva, and all. So those things also will be covered a bit. So the mode of launch, either you can launch through PSLV, GSLV, and nowadays space startups also has come. They're coming with the capability of the small satellite launch vehicles. And we hope that most of this, startups will, achieve their targets. So these are the major applications what we are focusing in currently. Now, just to have a quick glance, these are the space launching ports across the globe. And How many spacefaring nations are there in the world? Does any of you? There are major
So
six.
can you repeat?
How many spacefaring nations? I mean, how many countries are there in the world? They can launch their own satellites on their own without anyone help.
Is it six, sir?
Exactly. Yeah, six.
Yeah.
So we are one among the spacefaring nations. First is Russia. Next is USA, China. Then you have European Space Agency, India, and Japan. And uh, India is a country which is helping the developing countries. Like we started launching, African satellites, started launching South Asian uh, region satellites also, satellites from Nepal, satellites for Bhutan, satellites for Sri Lanka, and sometimes we launch even satellites for US. I mean UK also. This is one of our major achievement after our independence. Okay, so we are having a totally around six faring nations, and most of you are aware that we are launching our satellites from Satish Dhawan Space Center that is located at Sriharikota of Andhra Pradesh district. So this is the equatorial line, right? And French Guiana is very close to the equatorial line for launching of Ariane space rockets for communication purpose. Next is that mobile platform. See, there are two ways of launching: either launch from the land or either construct a ship, create a platform, and then you are going to have sea launch. Mostly people have seen the sea launch either in internet or somewhere, right?
Can you repeat your
Yes, sir.
question?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. So sea launch,
Yes, sir.
but launching from sea has its own advantages as well as its own disadvantages. Always remember, when you're launching close to the equator, your energy requirement is very, very less. But sea, the climate, the weather in sea is highly unpredictable. Okay, so it has its own challenges. But if you can launch from sea, it can save your payload, and it can enhance your payload, and it can, the power of rocket is effectively utilized with bare minimum range safety constraints. That's how we will be seeing down the line. So most of the launches are from the land. So it has its own, again, it has its own advantages and disadvantages. And land being a static, it will not move. Whereas the sea, the ship is not going to be static. The ship keeps on moving because of the waves. So they are the major disadvantages. Okay. Now, so far we talked about the technology, the evolution, and the applications. Now, coming to the need of the space law, I would like to ask why space law is required. See, I've given you a hint. There is an aviation law, there is a maritime law, there is a law pertaining to artificial intelligence and robotics that is evolving. There is a cyber law, and there's a space law. Why there is a space law? The need is required
to control the activities in space. For example, in one of the space laws part, there is for the we can't a single country or means nation can't occupy or means hold on or land anywhere else or destroy any other other planetary
No, I'm
land.
happy. You are near to the answer, but I'll be more precise to this word.
Sir, like every country
Course.
having its own orbits, right? So it has to.
No. I'll come to you. I'll come to you in the end. I'll come to you.
Security reasons, defense,
No, I'll come to your answer.
as space.
See, as I mentioned in the previous slide, when we are in the airspace, it is belong to the territorial. When we are in the air, when we are beyond this Karman line, it is not subject to. There is no sovereignty. State sovereignty over outer space is prohibited. Whereas each state over here means in the country by definition. So each state can enjoy sovereignty over the territorial space. So why space law is required? I'll just brief out for you. Yeah, you're talking correct. See, as I mentioned, Now, there are very limited spacefaring nations. If you look from this graph, there are approximately 190 countries are there. In fact, very close to 200 countries exist. But all the countries are not having the capability to launch. In order to launch, they require help from the other countries. How they are going to approach the other countries? They are going to approach the other countries through a concept of globalization and the trade. And this trade can be bilateral. Sometimes it can be multilateral also among the countries. You're clear? So when, let's say, India is launching some other country satellite, we are not launching for free. We are taking some either we are launching as a goodwill, or we launch the satellite and we ask some other in return of the launch we'll be asking some other benefit. Either it can be in terms of the monetary benefit, or it can be some policy related matters, or it can be some other some resources. India has launched a Dubai satellite. We'll be asking Dubai some other from trade related activities or some monetary benefits. So do India has launched one web series recently. So they have paid our government 600 crores. So that account has to be accounted somewhere. And those account has to be legalized. It cannot be like verbally. It has to be on record. So liability, what will happen if you are going to fail, or if the satellite is getting distracted? Satellite is being, fault. Either that fault has to be properly documented, properly recorded. As I mentioned, law is a set of rules and regulations. Those rules and regulations in space oriented. Let's say, for example, you are purchasing a smartphone. If something happens in the purview of the company will held responsible. Company will held liable. The moment you take this phone and come back to home, it is not working. Then how do you say? Where is the you? Then you will be claiming the liability or the damages as per your warranty card. But do the concept of warranty exists over here? You're getting the point, right? Yes. So this exactly what we are going to frame, and this as based on the guidelines, whatever as per the international laws, because this is being a highly technical. You cannot have a dedicated, common law for everything, because when we purchase any electronic equipment, we are giving a 1-year warranty minimum or couple of years warranty. But the same norms will not be applicable for the satellite, because satellites are not for commercial, they're for a specific usage. So you're getting the point, you're getting some insight. So these things have to be properly documented, signed upon the nations, signed upon the representatives, and then we need to mention. Then we are talking about a frequency management. So space, some of our friend mentioned that space doesn't belong to one nation. Yes, different nations will be operating in a different frequencies. So everyone wants to operate in one frequency, then it will be, chaotic. So those frequency management, like we were talking about, a communication satellite will operate at a different frequency, different orbits. So those orbit management and the frequency management, that has to be resolved among the countries. Then the safety, the ground and the range safety part also has to be addressed, because you're going to handle a big explosive, you're going to handle the most sensitive equipments. So those safety also has to be ensured. The human safety has to be ensured. Then insurance. When you're purchasing any vehicle, you're bound to take an insurance. The same will be applicable for the space objects also. It is better to go for an insurance. So there are some third-party insurance exists. Then we are going to authorize. You're going to have the launch authorization, payload authorization. If someone wants to launch a vehicle, which is when we talk about a space satellite, space launch vehicle, it is very close to missile. It is as good as a missile. So for what purpose they are going to launch, that has to be thoroughly reviewed and authorized by the state. Just like that, they can't authorize. And what payload they're using, whether the payload is for surveillance purpose or what. Next is the license. To drive a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler, you require a license. But to operate a launch vehicle, do you require a license? definitely you need to have a license, and then you're going to have the regulatory mechanism. What kind of regulatory mechanism, what kind of compliance, what kind of norms, and what policies you're going to make. And above all, should be ensuring the sovereignty of the state. The state sovereignty should not be disturbed. The law of land has to be respected. And next is the space weaponization. This particular space is meant for civil purpose, but not for the defense and the defense purpose. I mean, if you recall, I mentioned mostly today's space is being used for defense and strategic applications. So this has to be accounted in the international forum. Otherwise, everyone started using for the defense purpose, then very existence of the countries will be a question mark. Am I right? So now, below are the some figures I'm giving you for your insight. So this is the space debris illustrative picture. Now, I have mentioned about the environmental pollution. So the space environment is getting polluted because of the debris. Some of you have mentioned. Next, this is the lunar surface. Quite recently, you heard a scam. Land on the moon is being for sale. Can we really purchase a property on the moon? We cannot purchase as per the treaty. How? We are going to see in the coming slides. But how is that why it is a scam? Because people are ignorant. And the people are making money. And in Indian, there are many actors also, they have purchased a property on the moon. It really surprises me. I mean, how? And who is going to be responsible tomorrow? And it is meant to be a scam. Some agency this selling the land on moon, saying that it's the real estate on the moon. But where we are going to resolve this issue? On what grounds we are going to resolve this issue? That also we'll be seeing in the Moon Treaty. And this is one failure of the GSLV. Now this you can see over here in the mid-air, this entire thing has been destruct command has been issued. So this is not an explosion. This has been given a destruct command because it has been deviating from the range. So that's the reason destruct command has been issued. And people are familiar about this Chinese spy balloon, right? In the recent times, this has been flown on the US territory. And the moment it has entered the US airspace, they have destroyed it. So what could be the governing principles? As I mentioned, the sovereignty and the law of land has to be respected. For this, these are some of the areas where they are addressing in the space law based on the general guidelines formed out by UNO. That we'll be seeing. Each topic is very vast. I'll try to cover as much as I can in the given time. Okay. Now, when I mentioned about the accountability, space industry is rising at a rapid phase. Now in 2023, it is up to $400 billion, $450 billion. This is from the Morgan Stanley open market source. Now it is going to enhance to $1 trillion in the coming 2 decades. So you understand there is a lot of scope. And always remember, where there is a money, there is always scams in one way or other, related to it. And such things have to be addressed. That is the reason this space law is required, not just for monetary, even for the sovereignty also it is required. As I mentioned in my previous slide, someone was talking about sale of the property on the moon or the space. Yeah. Can you mute, please? Okay. Someone is talking about the sale of the property on moon, or someone is talking about the space debris, and someone will talk about range deviation or spying purpose. All these have to be addressed. That is one of the reasons why space law is required. And in the current scenario, when you talk about space, you're going to have the satellite services, satellite manufacturing. Satellite services are for the communication and providing internet services, satellite manufacturing, and the launch industry, and the ground equipment. Ground equipment talks about the tracking telemetry control to track the satellites. Satellite services talks about the data transfer and the Internet of Things. Satellite manufacture is the manufacturing of the satellites, and launch industry is for launching the satellites or the space objects into the space. So the human space program, space tourism, space colonization, all comes under the launch industry. Satellite manufacturing talks about like Starlink, OneWeb series, providing Internet of Things. So these kind of payload manufacturing, and satellite services are, classic example is a Starlink, OneWeb series. They're giving services to the customers and the civilians. So this is how the revenue is generated, and you can see the CAGR is at a very high growth from 2014 to 2018. How much it has been increased? It is growing at a very rapid pace, because everyone, previously there were only six spacefaring nations, but now most of the countries, developing countries, also want to develop this technology. Thanks to our forefathers, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai and Dr. Homi Jahangir Baba, for analyzing the importance of the space technology and then making us a self-sustained in the spacefaring nation. Otherwise, today, if you are going, let's say, if you go to USA or China, Russia to launch our own satellite, they'll be demanding huge amount of money. Today, we are having our own spaceport, our own space technology, our own launch capability. We could able to launch the developing countries, and we are taking the role of a leadership role among the developing nations. That's what today you can see in the G20, India word has been valued. And always remember, my friends, if you're technically sound, the world will listen to you. If you are technically powerful, the world will always listen to you. If you're not in a technically strong enough, the world will not pay attention to you. Today, India or China is the world market because we are having a number of users. That is one of the major reasons, and our technical skills are pretty good enough to be a very competent across the globe. But make sure that this technology should use it for a right purpose. We should not misuse the technology, and it's an ethical responsibility or the moral responsibility. So that is the reason. Now, so this is the growth of the market. So when the market is growing, as I mentioned, there should be a regulatory mechanism. I'm giving you a simple example. Most of you have heard about the Insurance Regulatory Board, or I can say Security Exchange Board. It's a regulatory mechanism for the stock market to prevent any scams. Insurance Regulatory Board exists to prevent any scams in the insurance. There is a regulatory board in pension fund to prevent any scams in the pension. So do we have a real estate board also, but not a full-fledged regulatory board. We call to be RERA. So these are some boards, mechanisms to address the issues, because the number of cases keeps on increasing. Every time you can go to the court, so you're going to have some dispute mechanism to resolve these issues. That exactly what this particular law. Now, when you come to the law, space law, how it has been formed. So we understood the need of the space law. We have seen the technology evolution in space. We have slightly understood the need of the law, and there should be a source of the law now. How this has been initiated. When after this space war started, space race, I would say, not war, space race has started among the developing countries, UNO has sensed, and they made a point. The Committee on Peaceful Usage of Outer Space, UNCOUPUS, Committee on Peaceful Usage of Outer Space has been formed. They want space to be used for civil applications rather than the military applications. For that, in the year 1967, the first Outer Space Treaty has formed, and the Outer Space Treaty addresses the environmental protection in space and on Earth, so resolution of the legal disputes, and also it also ensures that the space belongs to everyone. No individual can buy any property, no individual can own any property in space. So as per Outer Space Treaty, you can purchase a land in moon, but you cannot claim. You cannot claim. It is not meant to be legal. That is what exactly this shows as per this treaty in 1967. Then you talk about a rescue agreement. Rescue agreement talks about a rescue of the astronauts, cosmonauts, or any other space stations in space so that they are addressed. So based on this outer space treaty and rescue agreement, only this ISS has been international space station is functioning, because international space station is a joint venture between USA and USSR, and then across the globe many astronauts, many cosmonauts have able to provide services and make use of the ISS. Why? Because of these two treaties. Next, liability convention. Liability convention is what we are talking about in event of failures in space, like causing of the debris, the mitigation plans, or you're going to talk about launch failures. People have to be accounted, people have to be liable. So those addresses this liability convention. And then the registration convention. Registration convention talks about any space object being launched into the space has to be registered into the UNOOSA, that is United Nations Office of Outer Space. Why? Because you need to support, as I mentioned in the previous slide, you're going to have the tracking stations across the globe. If India is going to launch its satellite, we'll take the help of Indonesia, Australia tracking stations to track our satellites. In order to take a help of this Australia or Brunei or Indonesia and USA, because satellite rounds revolve around the Earth. So we cannot have our stations everywhere. We cannot have our ship. That in order to take the help, we need to register our own satellite. So do India is offering services for other countries' satellites also. Properly, they are registered in the UN nations. And next is the Moon Agreement. Moon Agreement exclusively talks about the lunar expedition, whether moon property belongs to anyone, and what kind of research to be carried out, whether we can take living creatures on moon, whether we can, and for if at all we take a living creatures of moon, what are the norms we should follow? We need to bring them safely. And you are familiar about this first living object going into space, the Laika. It's a dog. It has gone into the space. Unfortunately, Laika couldn't survive. USA has taken a chimpanzee before the manned mission to study its heart rate, heartbeat, pulse, and the vibration. When the chimpanzee came back, when it returned back, it had its, it was very weak. So why I'm mentioning all these things is, it is something like a medical industry. Before applying on human beings, we are testing our drug on animals. So many animal protection people have raised their voice that this is not meant, this is not the way it goes on. So certain norms have been formulated. So it's a very detailed treatise. I'm only giving you the gist of it. And the major outcome of the treatise are, first thing is environmental protection, liability damage caused by the space objects, resolution of the legal disputes, rescue of the astronauts, exchange of the information about the potential threats in space, use of the space-related technology for civil applications, and international collaborations. It is due to these treaties only we are going to have the international collaboration among the countries. And nevertheless, these are only set guidelines. One cannot, it is left to the countries. But if we, let's say, if we share our knowledge with others, we'll have a good reputation. That is what we are doing with the developing countries. Okay. Now I mentioned about space law, treaties, and significance. Now, when it comes to major sector, it's the space security and safety. In one of the point our friends were addressing about this particular space doesn't belong to any nation. Yes, but and the same way we are also talking about the space weaponization also. So what could be the space security, safety, and the sustainability? SSS, this is a major concern. The definition is referred over here. Why particular space security is necessary? Because if the space environment is good, then only we can sustain the space for the future. If we pollute the space environment, we cannot sustain for the future generations. Right? Then space situational awareness has to be created. The laws, policies, and the doctrines has to be well formulated. The civil space and the global utilities space. If everyone starts fighting for the orbits, then very soon we are going to end up with no space, right? Then space support for terrestrial military operations, space systems protections, and negation. So these are the 8 factors which talks about the space security index. Now, when it comes to the space safety, what are the measures you're going to take to ensure that the objects in space are safe? You have launched a satellite using crores of rupees, and the satellite in the space is not safe. How do you ensure that satellite is useful for the communication purpose? If you're added to that, you're also talking about the security, the safety and the security. So, and one more thing, the safety and the security goes hand in hand always. When we talk about a safety, that means some accident with some what we call unexpected events. We talk about it, and security is what we are going to have about intentional risk. Safety is what we are talking about unintentional risk. And if these two are addressed, safety and security is addressed, then we can ensure that sustainable also, we can sustain for a long period. Long period means for hundreds of years. And let me tell you, we started in the year 1957, the space, and not less than today, we are having more than around 10,000 objects in space. Most of them are space debris. So the question of sustainability is a major, will be a major concern for all of the persons to address. Okay, I have a few more slides. I'll quickly cover. Now, when I talk about a space security and safety and space weaponization, first and foremost thing what we talk about is debris mitigation. These space debris, these unwanted objects have to be addressed. We need to remove them. As some of our friend was mentioning in the early beginning, after the life of the satellite is over, it keeps revolving around the orbit. That today we need to have a mechanisms, guidelines followed as per IADC, Interagency Debris Committee, so that we can deorbit and throw it in the sea, such that the space can be sustained for a longer duration. Otherwise, it keep revolving in the orbit, and for the decades together, it is going to be the waste. Imagine you are in your household activities daily. You are collecting collection of the waste, but you daily dispose them. Then only your house looks clean. Otherwise, then only you're going to sustain in your home. If your waste is getting accumulated and piled up, then it will not going to be a lively situation in your home, right? So simple analogy to make you understand. So this particular debris mitigation and debris removal, currently the entire space agencies are working very hard. Next is space weaponization. As I mentioned, space is mainly used for the defense applications. One of such applications is that counter space technologies like anti-satellite mission, launching a ground-based missile to destroy the satellite so that the satellite cannot be used. And this is a destructive way. This is a non-destructive way. How this quite recently, China has successfully demonstrated this technology. So when a US satellite is passing, on the China space, China is going to emit the high power radiation laser such that they're going to blind the US satellite. Got it? So, and what China says is that, what China claim is that China doesn't want anyone to destroy their sovereignty. That's why they're blinding the US satellite. And this is a major breakthrough. This is one thing. And next is the satellite constellations. And today, the Starlink is having more than thousands of satellites. OneWeb, 648 satellites are there by number. And space resources exploitation. That means, are you aware that the nearest asteroid was explored, and then we brought the minerals of from the asteroid? We have started bringing minerals from the moon also. Be in the sense, NASA has done multiple missions. Then space traffic management. So space traffic management is the new concept because in
Yes.
the quite recent, you can listen over here, you can see over here, ESA in the official Twitter, they have mentioned ESA has performed a collision avoidance maneuver to protect one of its satellites from colliding with a mega constellation of the Starlink. So let me give you a simple example analogy of this traffic management. When the number of vehicles keeps on increasing and you're not having traffic signals, there's a chance that we have accidents. So this is similar to that. But unfortunately, here person is riding the vehicle. But in space, we are not having any maneuvers by humans. We are, of course, they're all manual. So those maneuvers have to be done by the ground-based systems. So they're not one, not two. There are a couple of incidents reported. Like there are many incidents unreported also. If someone is talking about a collision avoidance maneuver, officially, unofficially, you imagine how many collisions are happening in space, whether directly or indirectly. Right? Now, through this anti-satellite mission, how many orbital debris has generated? And let me tell you, China is one country which is not, following the norms. They don't follow the norms. I mean, they're very adamant. Let's say why I'm saying this particular word is, if you create a debris, it is your moral responsibility also to clean the debris, like what India has done. When India has done the mission Shakti, that is the ASAT mission in the year 2019, we ensured that all the debris got deorbited and most of them have fallen in sea. And second thing is that we have brought it to the very miniature particles and most of them got evaporated post collision. Whereas China has created around 3,000 orbital debris, and this is going to be in the debris for around decades together. With the amount of this debris, they're going to travel at a very high kilometers. I mean, they're going to travel for 5 to 6 kilometers per second. Are they not going to be a potential threat to the next generation satellites that we are planning to launch, that way at an altitude of 800 kilometers? So such things and all we should, and we have conducted our ASAT in a very low orbit. So it was in the year 2007, people have questioned China, but as you know that China is very adamant nation. It will never listen to international laws. And they preach laws very outside to the outside world. So these are some of the concerns that to address these concerns, the space laws are coming with new modifications, new ratifications, and next is that whether they're enforced or not is also a question. Enforced in the sense we are asking all the nations to abide with it, but if you are not going to abide the Indian law, you are going to be penalized. But what will happen if you are not going to abide with the international law? Are you going to penalize them? No. So that's the reason. Enforceability is a major concern. So now people started taking responsibility to address these things. Okay. So far, these are the major areas of concern. Now, I have covered about international domain. Now we are coming over Indian domain. As I mentioned, now we are going in a globalization mode. Now we can no longer be very much restricted to ISRO only. So the space, we have opened the doors for the private agencies also. Indian government has opened doors to the private agency also, asking private participation. And quite recently, in the year, mostly people are familiar with the latest bill of 2023. Of course, the bill started from 2014 onwards. Space activities finally took form in the year 2023. First draft was in the year 2017. Next policy started in 2020. Finally, the domain, the space policy was made public in 2023. We started launching foreign satellites in 2000 itself. Then we started launching remote sensing foreign satellites from 2010 onwards. Once we got confident into our own PSLV. So this was the thing. So we started our policy on paper in 1997, with the involvement of the foreign direct investment. As I mentioned, to enhance our economy, to enhance our GDP, definitely we need to make trade. We need to open our doors. Otherwise, we cannot enhance our own GDP. We cannot generate revenue. Today, whatever the technology we are making, we are investing crores of rupees. You need to ensure that we can generate the revenue back also in one way or other. So, what could be the major agenda of the space policy? Major agenda is that to involve the private participation so that the competitive market can be built. No doubt, ISRO is a fantastic organization. ISRO has contributed a lot. Now it is the time ISRO is going to take a senior role, and then it is going to incubate and promote, youngsters and promote the new generation through startups mode. And the agencies involved to formulate the space policy was DOS, ISRO, then Department of Telecommunication, InSpace, and NCIL. NCIL is a New Space India Limited. InSpace has formed in the year 2022. This is the regulatory body, Indian National Space Authorization Center. This is a regulation body, and I could say an interface body between a private entity and well as the ISRO for communications. And the major outcomes of this space policy is that we could able to form an industry consortium for manufacturing, assembly, integration, testing. Joint venture has come, joint proposals have come, public-private partnership has arisen, government-owned company-operated mode has come. Government-owned company-operated mode is like few facilities which are very expensive. They cannot be operated. Private industry cannot procure such equipment. Those equipments, what private industry is doing is they are sending their employees to ISRO to operate those equipment, right? So support to the private entities. As you are aware, Skyroot has launched their rocket in ISRO. Without the support of ISRO, it is not possible. Or Agnikul has made their own launch pad in ISRO, that is in Sriharikota. Do you think without the support of ISRO it would have been possible? No. So Pixel has launched its, not Pixel, Dhruva has launched its satellite. Then Digantara, I think Digantara has launched its own some orbit module. Bellatrix has launched electric propulsion module. So there was a support. So, private entities are taking the advantage, and support is generally required. But how well the private entity are going to utilize this opportunity also is important. Support is given doesn't mean the private entity should misuse it. This is the problem anywhere in the world. Someone is supporting us, will try to exploit it. So there should be some limit. So all this has been regulated by InSpace. Now, the next point, okay, I'm running out of time. I'll quickly mark it. When I talk about a launch, payload authorization, and the range safety, to launch a space object into space, it is not a small operation. Definitely, it's a technically challenging operation. It has to have a set of rules, regulations, and competencies also in technical domain. You have to ensure the technical due diligence and financial due diligence and the legal due diligence. So you're going to have a design committee. You're going to have the design committee looking for the clearance of the design configuration article. You're going to qualify, test it. Then after qualification testing, then you're going to take it to assembly and integration for final checks. Then you're going to look for the safety clearances, necessary launch insurance is there, existing, whether you're going to have the license or not, they'll be checking. Then the notice to airmen. As I mentioned, you're going to launch in the airspace. It is our intimation that we are going to launch a date within so-and-so time period. The launch window and the launch date will be communicated to aircraft and the sea time, so that imagine if you're going to launch and the debris is going to fall in the sea, the ships, the maritime and the airspace also should be familiar about this launch. So quite a few times we'll be seeing launches being captured from aircraft. it is possible in a Starship, Falcon rockets, and Chandrayaan also. Some videos have circulated in the internet, but this is for intimation, notice to airmen, such that they'll not go in this route to avoid the traffic. Next is that launch authorization and countdown. So these are the range and operations we are going to have. So you are going to have at each and every operation, you are going to have all the procedures documented with the manuals. Then the payload checkout, charging. It can be either charging through battery. If there is no battery, if there are engines, you can go into fuel it. Launcher assembly and test. There's a final level checks. Propellant fueling, as in the case of the liquid engines. Then the weather is very important. If the weather is conducive, then only you can launch. Then range safety clearance, launch sequence, countdown, NOTAM, and something unexpected situation happening during the launch. So we are going to have a distress command, like what we have done in the few cases of the GSLV. If there is a deviating in the range safety, we are going to ensure that we are going to abort during the flight. Contingency plan, call of procedures, TTC, and the ground support. That is the range support. As I mentioned, when the launch vehicle is, in the intended trajectory, it has to be tracked by our mission control center, launch control center. Then only we can know where exactly our launch is. Next is call of procedure and the post-launch operations, checking the inspection of the site, any untoward situations or any anomalies existed. So this is a long, elaborated procedure. And as a launch campaign manager for the first maiden flight, I have ensured all these things, and I have ensured the compliance of all these norms, regulatory as well as the statutory norms. Now, next, is the same procedure followed for the private entities? Yes, of course, the same procedure is followed for the private entities. And who is going to review it? As I mentioned, the regulatory entity. Let's say the private entity is getting first private entity, let's say Skyroot, Agnikul, or Pixel. They'll put the proposal to InSpace, and once the proposal with all the registration is through, then the MOU is signed. That is a memorandum of understanding. After the memorandum of understanding, then we are going for the joint venture with the joint proposal, including the financial terms. Then at a periodical reviews will take place. Once the periodical review takes place, then we are going to work out for the implementation plan and the arrangements. And finally, we are going for the closure report. So this will go in a cyclic process from InSpace to ISRO to private entity. And the private entity can be anything, private startups in India. Okay. So the launch of any private entity space objects, either it could be the spacecraft, the orbital module, the testing, the deployer, the launch vehicle, the suborbital flight, anything, they're authorized subject to the compliance of the standard pertaining to technical, legal, regulatory, etc., etc. So the technical due diligence and the legal due diligence has to be ensured, because the launch insurance, as I mentioned, it is a responsibility of the state. So finally, ISRO is answerable launching any private space object, because outside world will ask India government, and India government has to have a strong answer whether it is reviewed thoroughly or not. Earlier time, when ISRO used to launch, completely ISRO being a government organization, ISRO is itself answerable. But today, when a private entity is launching, the question of liability and accountability lies with the state. The state over here is ISRO, as per international treaty. Now, I hope people are clear, right? Now, these are some of the space startups in India. I need not speak about the Skyroot or Agnikul. And at the same time, you are going to have the Bellatrix. Adya is making some manufacturing components for launch vehicle as well as for the satellite. Then you have the Kepler, Digantara, InSpace City talking about the orbital services. Then Dhruva and Galaxy Pixel, they're making the satellites. For on-orbit services, these three are there. That is in the space solutions. Then you are having SatSure, Caladio. There are many. And in India, currently, there are more than 400 startups. Let us hope that they're going to meet their requirements. And quite recently in news, you have seen, being a capital intensive organization, there should be a, as I mentioned, no. So these regulatory norms are very essential. So recently, Skyroot has declared in public that they're having a, I mean, mm, the, there are a loss of 55 crores for the current for the financial year 2023. So such things also have to be addressed. So this is here is my presentation. So sincere acknowledgement to my teachers and my ISRO colleagues, contemporaries. I'm ex-ISRO. So whatever the knowledge in space I have learned down the line, it's from ISRO. And Nalsar University, currently I'm pursuing my space and telecommunication law. And the Resolute team for giving this opportunity. So thank you all. So hope I have taken 10 minutes extra. So you have a few sessions for the question and answer one by one. If you can come, I'll be very glad to address these questions. Yeah, Raju, can you answer your question? Raju Singh Sisodia.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
my question is regarding that we have covered basic thing and understanding about according to the law and all the thing. But in real world experience, I can tell you some thing which is not under covering this space law. Like we are using, some countries are using hypersonic missiles that also go to low Earth orbit and come to space to ground.
Yeah.
Earth. So it is not covered in that space.
See,
law.
when I talk about space law, mainly it is for the space is for civil applications. We cannot talk about a defense application. Defense is nothing. Defense is related to the sovereignty of the state. But no matter when you launch a defense missile, also you need to inform the NOTAM. You need to generate the NOTAM up to this spot. And if they are launching any hypersonic missile, they're ensuring within their airspace. They're ensuring the outer space also within a certain reach. They're not reaching things. But there are reports also that China has traveled entire world with the hypersonic missile.
Yes.
Such reports exist. And it was too late. By the time it was questioned, they have finished the missile. They have finished the mission. And as I mentioned, China is a country which gives least attention to the international law. You can see how they're intruding into Taiwan. So when you talk about the real-time world, no, the enforceability is a question mark. As I mentioned, Indian law by default is we are all abided, we are all enforced. But is it the same way is possible for the international means? No. Enforceability is a question, but it talks about the reputation.
Yeah. Okay. Sir, I have one more question here.
Yeah.
Even I have two more questions here right now. Second question is so all the rules and regulation which is set up, these are applicable to the country. Okay, but nowadays we can see the private space agency are coming and they are trying to explore through
private space agency also. They are under the regulatory norms laid down by the InSpace.
Yes. So that's why I'm asking about them. So we have heard about that SpaceX and Orion, Blue Origin. So these companies are trying to set up their own. These companies are trying to set up their own space rules. And if you have heard the international news that European Space Agency opposed them, even European Union opposed them, that how can they set up their own space rules? And they are creating threat to the space.
Yeah, you're right. Rajesh Singh, in one line, I will tell you an answer. Private agencies or private entities, as I mentioned, now when it comes to the monetary matters, they are not going to do for charity. They are doing for business. For the first place. Second place, why would the private companies do service for charity? In India, ISRO is a service-based organization, not a revenue generation organization. This is the answer. Based on this, so SpaceX has come up with their own norms. When European Union as a nation, they are opposing it. But whether it is implementable or not, in a due course of time, we will be seeing this. And definitely, and today SpaceX is a monopoly in re-entering the orbit, reusable launch vehicles. As long as you are the monopoly, they'll do things. The moment when it is getting extended, no scenario will change. That's it.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
And last question. We have heard that despite existing this space law, U.S. Initiated this its Star War program. Okay, that was not covered under this space law. There
Yeah.
was so
See,
many
no,
dispute. And one
Star
more
War.
thing.
I
Yeah.
am answering your question. When you talk about a Star War, see, as I mentioned, space weaponization is one of the major topic and a major concern for the, you know, uh, for the world. Why I am talking about a space weaponization, and space as meant for the peaceful usage of the outer world. When UN was established, it is only meant for the peaceful usage of the world, for the peace. But as I mentioned, whomsoever technologically advanced, the world listens to them. Whomsoever are monetarily advanced, the world listens to them. Who will, let's say, when there could be a conflict between USA and India, the entire world tries to support USA because USA is influential, right? And in to answer your question in a line, law we read that law is common for all citizens, but when it comes to politicians or high grade politicians or in a bureaucrats, law will be dealt separately. This is the answer. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And recently we heard that America is planning to do a nuclear test on Moon to set up their space-based launching station for this outer celestial bodies.
See, this
And
is a
so,
speculation. Yeah, this is a speculation because, as per the Moon Treaty, Moon cannot be used for a nuclear or armament strictly because Moon is the very closest natural object to the Earth. If any disturbance in the Moon, it is going to affect Earth. People have understood that. That's the reason dedicatedly Moon Treaty was formulated in the year 1984, which USA is one of the country to sign it. And today USA cannot violate it. And if USA tries to propose any as such thing, no, there will be going to be a big retaliation from the world. But as I mentioned, whether USA can be penalized or not is a question mark. Okay.
yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay. Fine. We'll go to Lekope Langwasi. Yeah, please answer. Please question. Mr. Lekope Langwasi, you're in the queue. Could you please?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Your voice is not audible. Or else, can you do one thing? Can you text it in the chat? That would be better. Meanwhile, I'll take another query. Any other?
Oh yeah, for your presentation. It's really wonderful. Actually, work and so from my experience, I've never had a Tesla. I've been excited on it, but I am grateful I have this opportunity to hear your presentation. My concern, as we are common law family.
Mr. Lekope, your voice is not clear. I mean, there's a lag is there. Could you text it? It will be very great beneficial. So I'll take our Aditya Nair question. Aditya.
Good evening,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah, good evening.
So, like, means after this treaty was made, means means there was a classification, means there was a classified file which was declassified afterwards, which was of means US means the defense department noted. So in that means what they shown was the means they were gonna test a nuclear weapon on the lunar surface. Means after the treaty was made, so means why the world didn't like means oppose that, means like after it was
I'll
the
answer your question.
retaliation wasn't there.
Yeah. If you look into the treaty, the timelines 1967 to 1984, USA is always clever. They started to make the treaties when they require. USA always plays a game changer politics in the world, either USA or and today China is following the same thing. So they make the treaties or the law depending on their convenience. Okay,
Yes.
so when uh, when USA start when USA started making treaties, they know that they're in a safe position. That's it.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. And your
Okay.
session was very
Yeah, sure. Okay.
amazing. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Nice. Any other question? Mr. Lekope, you can type your question. Huh? I'm just waiting for your question. I think they're. Yeah. I think.
Hello, Mr. Lekope is still writing the question. If you can please bear
Okay.
with
Okay.
me.
Okay. Thank you. And Kashyap Kadambari, can you answer? Can you?
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah. You're audible. Tell me.
Sir, actually, I wanted to know what is the credibility of commercial space flight right now. The companies like Blue Origin and Virgin are trying to, do the commercial space flight. They're trying to put civilians into the space, and so how come they don't have the problem of rules and regulation there? Also,
No.
what is the
No.
credibility of commercial space flight right now
Yeah. See.
in the current market?
Yeah. Space tourism, space colonization. So these are the two domains what our uh, private entities like SpaceX or Blue Origin is targeting on. As I mentioned, they're going to target them on a revenue based things. And hope people are familiar about the recent explosion of the submarine. I forgot the submarine name. When the submarine was going into it is going to the famous Titanic wreckage place. When it, but the question existed: who is liable for it? People, because people have signed the disclaimer form that the company is not responsible for any kind of damages, including death. So when you have signed the disclaimer form, how do you say? Now the query comes. That is from one perspective. Another perspective is that comes as a subject of the maritime law or the law of land, because it is in an ocean. Yeah. Thanks for remembering. It's a Titan submarine. So the Titan submarine, it's very cleverly they have ensured this law. So the terms and conditions have to be properly read by the people. Now, when you to answer your question, space tourism taking civilians, something happens to the civilians, either the company is answerable or the government is answerable. Why would the government take responsibility? And in the current scenario, uh, companies will not take responsibility. Company will look to the disclaimer choice only. When you try to board any Wonderla or exhibition planes or some instruments, they'll take a disclaimer. You are having any disease, you are having anything. This is not recommended for so and so people. They can say recommendations only, but it is again individual right to be a part to board that mission. Right? So this is not well established as of now, but is in the evolution phase. As I mentioned, space law is evolving. Even though the first treaty took place in 1967, and the pace at which the technology is evolving, the law is not evolving. So technology is multi-folds that of the law. So definitely this will be addressed, because there's a subject of the launch insurance. There's a subject of the insurance of the people. Who is going to insure for them? And as you know very well, in the insurance, only if the dead body is available, only then only people will get the insurance. In the Titan submarine, you will not get any dead bodies, but they are declared to be dead. After declaration to be dead, only then only they'll be getting any insurance. But whether you get insurance for the risk adventures like mountain climbing, trekking, or submarine or space, that's a question mark. How many companies are willing to come? So no private company or no insurance company will do for service or charity. Always remember this in mind. But it is a regulatory mechanism. That's why, as I mentioned, pension fund regulatory or insurance regulatory, these responsibilities of these regulatory uh, agencies, then only these things can be enforced. Okay. No, am I clear to you, Kashyap? Yeah, can you go for the next?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, our question. Yeah, we one more question, please.
So I would like to ask a question that currently asteroid mining and all has been coming in a lot of talk. So are there any current laws regarding that?
See, when I mentioned as per Outer Space Treaty, space is not owned by anyone, any individual, or any nation. Space is for all mankind. But you have the technology, you are going to asteroid mining it. It's as simple as that. But you are not claiming the entire asteroid as yours. You are mining the asteroid, mining the minerals on the moon, and then bringing back to your lab. But there is also a clause that this is only for a research studies. As I mentioned, law has its own loopholes. People should not use the loopholes. That's it.
Also, so I had another question. I'm
Yeah.
actually currently in my second year BTech in computer science engineering,
Okay.
and I want to pursue a career in ISRO. So can you just guide me about it?
Career in ISRO, you can, okay.
Like,
You have a conventional ICRB examinations to be a part of ISRO. It's all India level examination. Wait for the notification and then you can apply. You regularly follow ISRO site, not just ISRO, all the sites of ISRO. Okay.
Okay.
And if you're passionate about the space, you need not be a part of ISRO. You can be a part of any startup also. You'll have a better understanding. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Our friend, let us address our friend Nurali Jivaji question. See, I have mentioned mainly about the space development, particularly in India, because in the current scenario, what about the international norms and how India is abiding to those norms? I have given an answer because my experience is in India. Okay, I have not had a global exposure. Okay, and space development, encouraging other countries to introduce space law. See, when you look into the developing countries, they're evolving. First, they'll start bringing the technology. After bringing the technology, they start developing the technology. After developing the technology, they start giving to the end user. Only when the end user gets the fruits of the technology, then only they can have the space law to be enforced. Otherwise, what is the need? Without technology, what you will do with the law? That is a major thing. And when you talk about core space law, not all the countries is having the space law. Very few countries are having the space law. And in India, there's only one university giving space law. Sorry, couple of universities, three universities are giving. One is JNU, second is the Nalsar University, third is the university in Gujarat. These three universities are giving a space law. And in Europe, there are many countries giving space law. Many universities providing space law. And I'm not sure about the developing nations, but I believe that South Africa is also one country is emerging into this domain. Let's hope. Very limited knowledge about the African countries. And when you go to USA and Central America and South America, there are many universities giving space law. And in the Eastern countries, Southeastern countries, China has its own universities, and Japan has their own universities. So globally, it is available, but in a very limited way because there is a very limited people are doing this space. Of all the people, how many people are working in space? You can count on the percentage is very less. So when the percentage is less, so accordingly the university also will be very less. But in the coming scenario, this will increase. We hope. Okay. I hope this question is addressed, Lepako. Yeah, we'll go for the next question. Someone has raised their hands.
So sir, like example NASA, example, they are they are a International Space Station. In a case, like in an example, an astronaut has committed a crime in International Space Station by violating any space laws. How does NASA resolve these issues? Being the
Nice.
space
When
aliens.
an astronaut commits a crime, when an astronaut commits a crime, before before being an astronaut, he's subjected to certain test, psychological test. Then his background verification, everything will be checked thoroughly. Due to some reason, he's committing a crime. Definitely, he'll be sent out of ISS as per the treaty. Treaty aboarding the ISS. Let's say you're taking a car, you're riding a car. If you'll tell in advance saying that it not no smoking or no consumption of alcohol. If someone takes, smokes or consumes alcohol, what you will do? You will ask immediately to get out of the car. That is as simple as that. Because it is your own car, it's on your own property. So do ISS is a property of USSR and USA. So they'll ensure that strictly by the norms and regulations of the ISS, everyone follows the certain protocol. When I'm in ISRO, I need to follow ISRO protocol. When I'm in ISS, I need to follow ISS protocol. It is as simple as that. Okay. Okay. Next, our mission universe is there. Please.
Good evening, sir. My name is
Good evening.
Gurpreet.
Okay.
Sir, I want to ask, is there any law for making rovers and sending rovers into space for interplanetary mission?
See, when you talk about rovers for interplanetary, it is a part of the space object. Definitely, your space object has to be registered as per registration convention. And because it is a subject, and added to that, I have also given a presentation on the lines mentioning that, you know what, how it is being reviewed, how it is being authorized, how it is ensured that it is, I mean, the qualification, all after ensuring the technical due diligence, legal due diligence, and financial due diligence, then only you're going for the launch. Otherwise, you will not be going for the launch. And the rover also ensures, you need to ensure that rover you're not carrying any living, living particles with it. It should be only an object only, not a living objects. Okay.
Okay.
There is no as such law. You can send as many rovers as you can, but it is a very expensive process. NASA has its own Curiosity mission. We have sent our Pragyan rover. So there is no as such law, and the rover is placed in a satellite. The moment after the landing, successfully we have, sent our rover, and then it is capturing the pictures. Currently, it is in the hibernation mode, sleeping mode. The moment it comes back. I mean, we are waiting to switch on the rover right now, as on the current status.
Another question is, as you have worked in ISRO, so what do you think ISRO is interested in investing in projects which are associated with astrobiology, like NASA does?
Of course, we have earlier missions with the CCMB, tied with CCMB, and done with the space capsule recovery experiment, wherein we mentioned some payloads. So this astrobiology, when you talk about it, how vegetables are growing in space, that is one subject. Definitely, it is required. So, about to what extent we are going to do, but make sure it should not be like a science fiction movie, sir, generating some bacteria over there. And yes, there are some reports by few states or few agencies. They have taken the bacteria. These bacteria can grow in the absence of oxygen, and that is sometimes it may lead to the violation of the norms as per the treaties. But if this bacteria is for the mankind applications, that is acceptable, but should not be for any other applications. Okay, like bioweapon and all.
Okay.
So these things have to be registered in the international forum. Otherwise, in the international media, you will be treated as a violator. Okay.
Okay. One more question.
Yeah.
According to you, which industry is going to grow, which is related to space applications, like for private players, rover or rockets, or directly associated with research work related to astrobiology or astrochemistry?
Space is a domain.
In the next 20-30 years.
Space is a domain. It's a capital intensive domain. In order for you to take a rover into space, you need to have a rocket. You need to have a satellite. So rover is the end outcome. So first outcome is a rocket. Next is the satellite. Next is a rover. So satellite domain, especially in the coming 20-30 years, satellite-based internet, satellite-based communications are going to change the world in the coming 2 decades. So Currently, Starlink has, you know, flooded the entire space with more than 3,000 satellites. Okay. So
Uh,
our Aditya is in line.
Maybe
Yeah,
I'm
Aditya.
not able to connect with that question. I'm
No, no,
asking.
no. I'll tell you. See, when you talk about astrobiology rover and all, see, these are all for
Uh,
exploration.
Let me clear this. That uh, which industry would grow mainly for rover or medical-based applications on astronaut in the next 20-30 years? As we can see, there are missions
Okay.
by NASA for Artemis, and by from India it's Gaganyaan, or similar missions would come in the next decades. So in the next 20-30 years or 40 years, which industry according to you would grow
Okay.
medical
Oh, I'll
based
put you one word.
application in
I'll
space,
put you.
or astrobiology or chemical experiments? Chemical, which
See,
industry would go in that terms
there
for
are few
private players?
company. Yeah, there are few companies which have registered, but I'm expecting in the coming couple of years they're going to make a full-fledged presentation with the technology. And once if they right now they're in the embryonic phase, I mean, like in the nascent phase. Once they attain a certain maturity and given a test demonstration, then I can comment. It is too early for me to comment on the private players. And why today most of the people know only Skyroot or Agnikul means because down the line they were for years together, they started marketing also. And currently there is no marketing in this domain because people are working in a stealth mode. Yes, there are some few companies exist. There are few companies exist. I'm not denying it, but I cannot tell. I cannot guarantee because this is a research. No, it takes time.
Thank you, sir.
Mainly in the astrobiology. Mainly in the astrobiology.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Next, Aditya. Yeah.
Sir, I have one more doubt, means question or doubt. Sir, I have noticed in recent years, 1 or 2 years, from 1 or 2 years, means, or we can say from starting only, that American launches, American defense launches, and Chinese defense launches both, like we are getting no information about it, and that you said that we have to class say them what it is and how it would work, etc., according to the space law. But these both countries, and even Russia, but Russia this, yes, it launches, but compared to USA and China, not like in numbers. So like I was like, they shouldn't they like openly say that what is like specifications of the, means at least the specifications of the satellite, because to like be inside the space law.
See, when you talk about space, defense and space go hand to hand. Aviation, aerospace is one field. Next is space and defense is a typical sector. And space, whatever when we're talking about, I'm mainly focusing on the civil applications only. But space no doubt can be used for defense applications. In India, we have categorized into two domains. One is defense organization, one is space organization.
DRDO and ISRO.
So it's clearly mentioned ISRO is for civil organization. Whereas in case of USA, Russia, before the Cold War or before all these treaties have formed, they were extensively using for space weaponization only. And today, now they have realized the error because it is going to be posing a threat to the other countries. Because as more and more countries involved in the space research area, people will question in the international forum. Then these laws and treaties have to be, you know, referred, and now they have made a category. And NASA has stopped civil launches, and then all the civil launches and all has taken care by SpaceX Blue Origin. So you don't see anything. So NASA is mainly focusing on the defense. But in case of India, DRDO is focusing on defense, ISRO is focusing, and our startups also started venturing, and our startups are in a very nascent phase. It takes a decade more to be a self-established, self-reliant. Yes, and Russia and China are closed domains. Why do they share their things? So it is out of the when they are closed domains, why we are worried about them? Okay.
Means like,
Yes,
yeah,
but we need to
they
worry.
are not giving any information about the
No,
satellites
no,
which is
need not. It's not necessary. See, what is going in your home, it is your private. So they
okay,
are
means
taking
space
as a
law
private
applies on
purpose only.
civilian purposes.
See, they are strategic areas. Space is a very strategic sector. So, nevertheless, to say we need to mention it or not. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next. Our friend is requesting for a group photo. Please turn on your cameras.
Yeah, guys, please turn on your camera, please. And thank you, sir, for this session.
Yeah.
It was really.
No more. Any more queries?
Any queries, guys? Any questions? Just turn on your camera, everyone.
No, thank you.
Keshav, turn on your camera. Raju Singh Sisodia ji, turn on your camera. Kashyap Kadambari, turn on your camera. No, Kashyap,
Yes, sir.
turn on your camera, Kashyap ji. Just turn on your camera, that's it.
Yeah, guys. Tanush has done. Priyanka, Nandini, Akash, Lekope. Okay. So, did you guys enjoy today's session? Just one question, okay?
See, mostly this is a technology and law go mixed together. It's amalgam. So, so anything is there, just you can connect to Arjit, okay? And someone was asking the presentation, you can contact our Arjit, right?
Totally. So yeah, let's have
Okay.
a group photograph, okay, with a limited set of people. Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Nice.
So yeah. So thanks all for joining and thanks sir for this wonderful session. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
sir.
good day. Good night. Bye.
Yes.